Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Dear students of first year, welcome for the new class of database, and today's topic is data modeling. In data modeling, we will discuss the ER model and the ER diagram. So first of all, what is ER or data modeling? So a data model is a logical representation. What is mean by logical representation? As we have already discussed, then when there are relations, when there are tables and they are associated with each other, they are linked with each other, there is a relationship between them. So that is called a logical representation of an organization. So data model is a logical representation of data in an organization. So when you create a database, why you create a database? That you will ultimately enter some data in that database. What that data is called? That data is called the instance of that database, in which you put the real data. For example, you create a table, a relation for the students. So inside that table, you will put the real data, the actual data about the students. If there is a table, a relation by the name of book, so you need to enter records regarding the books, which are called the real data, the actual data, or the instances of the real world. So that is, the logical representation of data in that organization for which we are going to develop the database. Now, why we create data model? Why we are doing data modeling, which is called logical representation? The sole purpose is to describe the elements of a database. Now the question is that what are the main elements of database? So till now what we have discussed, we will discuss only those elements. So the elements, you have the entities. You need to find the main entities of that organization. For example, if it is an hospital, so what are the main entities for that hospital? The main entities for that hospitals are doctor, patient, and the medicines, the beds, the operation theater, all these information. So these are the entities. You need describe the elements of database system for that organization. Then you find the attributes, and then you make relationships between them. So what is basically this? To describe the main elements of the database systems and their relationship between them. What is the relationship? We will today we will discuss it. What is the relationship? But this is an association, a meaningful association between two tables, a logical relationship between two tables, an entity relationship diagram. Inside, what is ER model? It is a logical representation, but that logical representation is then represented by an ER diagram that illustrates the relationship between data. That what kind of relationship will occur between different types of data. Today we will discuss it in much thoroughly with diagrams, with example, each everything. But the data modeling is a very time intensive work. It needs time, because you are going to finalize the main entities for that organization, because you're going to finalize the attributes, the fields, the column headings for that organization. And then the more technical work is that how to create a relationship between tables. What kind of relationship will be there. So to find all the relationships among all tables, this is a very time intensive process, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of information about the organization. So it is a technical work, and it is a very high quality work you need to do. Then after this, what is an entity relationship diagram. Entity relationship diagram, it is the graphical when you represent your logical data model in a graphical way, that is called ER diagram. So we represent them in a graphical way, in a flowchart way, in a diagrammatical way, and that is called ER diagram. So for ER diagram, what we do, we find the entities for the organization. If you want to create ER diagram, it is called entity relationship diagram, or shortly it is called ER diagram. If you want to create an ER diagram, first you need to finalize the main entity for that organization. After that, you need to find the main attributes or properties for that organizations, and then the relationships between the relations, and then the relationships between the relations. Relations means tables, and here you find attributes of entities, and in some cases you find attributes for the relationship as well. So let's revise a little bit that the graphical representation of a data model is called ER diagram or entity relationship diagram. इसमें हम क्या करते हैं? Dear students, we find the main entities for that organization. For example, अगर कॉलेज के लिए बना रहे हैं तो स्टूडेंट एक एंटिटी है, टीचर एक एंटिटी है, कोर्स आपकी एक एंटिटी है, लाइब्रेरी एक एंटिटी है, अकाउंट्स एक एंटिटी है, इसके अलावा एग्जाम एक एंटिटी है, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. ये तमाम एंटिटीज जब आप फाइंड करते हैं, फिर स्टूडेंट्स की क्या क्या एट्रीब्यूट्स होने चाहिए, आप वो एट्रीब्यूट्स फाइंड करते हैं. अगर स्टूडेंट और टीचर के दरमियान आप एक लॉजिकल रिलेशनशिप बना रहे हैं, एक एसोसिएशन, एक लिंक क्रिएट कर रहे हैं, दो टेबल को अगर आप उसका रिलेशनशिप मालूम कर रहे हैं, तो देखें कि उस रिलेशनशिप के क्या एट्रीब्यूट्स बनते हैं और उन एंटिटीज के क्या एट्रीब्यूट्स बनते हैं. जब आप इनको फाइनल करते हैं, उसके बाद नेक्स्ट स्टेप हमारा क्या है कि वी ड्रॉ एन ER डायग्राम. अब ER डायग्राम के लिए कौन कौन से हमारे पास सिंबल्स हैं, उन सिंबल्स को फिलहाल पढ़ते हैं. This parallelogram, it is a parallelogram symbol, parallelogram shape, and this symbol is used to represent the entity. अगर आपने ER डायग्राम में जब भी आपको ये सिंबल नजर आए तो इसका मतलब है कि ये एंटिटी को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहा है। जब भी आप एंटिटी को लिखेंगे, द एंटिटी नेम मस्ट बी रिटन इन कैपिटल। इसका पहला उसूल क्या है कि फॉर एग्जांपल आप एंटिटी का नाम लिख रहे हैं तो इट मस्ट बी कैपिटल एंड इट दे आर रिटन इनसाइड द दिस इज नॉट पैरेललोग्राम, दिस इज रेक्टेंगल। तो रेक्टेंगल के दरमियान आप लिखते हैं, सॉरी आई कॉल्ड इट पैरेललोग्राम बट इट इज अ रेक्टेंगल। रेक्टेंगल के दरमियान आप एंटिटी का नाम लिखते हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल ये हो गया, यह आपने फोर्स, ये क्या है आपके पास, दिस इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ एंटिटी। तो एंटिटी को रिप्रेजेंट करने के लिए हमारे पास रेक्टेंगल सिंबल है। Now, to show the relationship between or among relations or table, we use a diamond symbol, and this is used to represent the relationship or association। दो टेबल्स के दरमियान अगर आपने रिलेशनशिप को शो करना है, एसोसिएशन को, लिंक को शो करना है, तो उसके लिए आप ये लिखते हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैं लिखता हूं मैनेजर मैनेजेस एम्प्लॉयज। यहां पे हम किस चीज को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं कि ये एक एंटिटी है, ये भी आपके पास एक एंटिटी है। बोथ एंटिटीज आर रिप्रेजेंटेड बाय द रेक्टेंगल सिंबल्स एंड द एसोसिएशन बिटवीन देम इज रिप्रेजेंटेड बाय अ डायमंड सिंबल। तो इसको हम एसोसिएशन कहते हैं या रिलेशनशिप कहते हैं। जब भी आपने इसको रिप्रेजेंट करना हो तो ये एक डायमंड सिंबल की सूरत में आप इसको रिप्रेजेंट करें। Number third, the oval shape. This oval shape is used to represent an attribute. जब भी एट्रीब्यूट को रिप्रेजेंट करना ओवल शेप, और इसमें जब भी इसके अंदर हम लिखेंगे एट्रीब्यूट्स को तो वो स्मॉल अल्फाबेट्स में होंगे, लेकिन पहला लेटर उसका क्या होगा, कैपिटल। फॉर एग्जांपल एक एट्रीब्यूट है नेम, so you have to write it like this। जब भी आपने स्टूडेंट का या स्टूडेंट आईडी है या एड्रेस है, so they are written like this। and the last we have to represent the primary key। आपने जब भी प्राइमरी की को रिप्रेजेंट करना हो तो उसको आप क्या करेंगे, अंडरलाइन करेंगे। दिस लाइन शोज द प्राइमरी की। व्हाट इज द प्राइमरी की? द प्राइमरी की इज यूज्ड टू represent and identify which identifies the record uniquely। जो यूनिकली किसी रिकॉर्ड को आइडेंटिफाई करता है तो उसको हम प्राइमरी की कहते हैं। फॉर एग्जांपल आपके पास है स्टूडेंट नंबर, तो उसको आप क्या लिख करेंगे, अंडरलाइन करेंगे और उसको सिर्फ ओवल शेप में। सो दिस इज योर प्राइमरी की। These are the symbols that we are using in ER diagram. Now let's move toward the elements of an entity relationship डायग्राम. ER डायग्राम में कौन कौन सी एंटिटीज हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं, हम यूज करते हैं, उसको हम पढ़ते हैं. Okay. ER डायग्राम की कुछ एलिमेंट्स पढ़ते हैं एंड द फर्स्ट एलिमेंट इज एंटिटी. आप जब किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए डेटाबेस बनाते हैं तो किस चीज को आप एज एन एंटिटी ले सकते हैं. व्हाट आर द थिंग्स दैट यू कैन रजिस्टर देम, यू कैन टेक देम एज एन एंटिटी. तो इसमें हमारे पास है, चेक कर लें, इसमें हमारे पास एंटिटीज कैन बी प्लेस, पर्सन, ऑब्जेक्ट, इवेंट. इट कैन बी अ प्लेस, इट कैन बी अ पर्सन, it can be an object, it can be an event, and it can be a concept. So we can take any place or any person like teacher, doctor, student. You can take them as an entity. And object like computer, object like different, you have laptops, you have digital cameras. These objects, if you want to record them in your database, they can be your entities. Book is an object, can be taken as an entity. So let's take some examples of these entities. Like person, it can be employee, it can be a doctor, it can be a student. Then place. In place you can take a state, a city, a country. So these can be your entities, right? Now an object. An object we can take, like book is an object, your computer is an object, etc. Events. Okay, in events we can take sale, admissions, exam. You know, admission is an event. You have given a date for admission, so it is an event. Examination, a date is given for an examination, is an event that has to be happen on a specific date, specific time. Then you are selling some items on a specific location, specific date, specific, for example, with some properties. So these are your events. And the last is concept. It can be a course, and it can be account or work center. These are some examples of entities. So the first element of your ER diagram is, it can be a place, a person, an object, event, or could be a concept as well. But if it is a person, like you can take an employee, he is a person, doctor is a person, student ultimately is a person, And then we have place, it can be state, city. So these are the examples of these entities as well. Now let's take another element of an entity, and that is what is an entity instance? A single of an entity is called the single occurrence of an entity is called an entity instance. What do you mean by single occurrence of an entity? For example, let me give you an example. Like I write roll number of a student 254. Name of a student is Ahmad Khan. Then phone is 0342 9070630. Then address is Peshawar. So this is the real world data, the actual data, and this is called an instance of an entity, which is the occurrence of an entity type or of an entity. And this is a simple, I would say that entity instance is also a key element of our ER diagram. The ER diagram would contain the entities, the ER diagram would contain entity instance, and the ER diagram would contain attributes. Attributes, dear students, are actually the properties of an entity type. They are called the attributes of an entity. There, as already I have told you, that there are the entities, there are the attributes of a relationship as well. But here we are discussing the entities of the attributes of an entity type or an entity. So they are the properties, or I would say they are the characteristics of an entity type. For example, let me give you an example that if you have a entity student, so what are their attributes? The attributes are student ID, student name, phone, address. If you have an entity by name of book, so their attributes are book ID, book title, author, publisher, etc. So these are the attributes of an entity type. So you can say that attribute is a main element of your ER diagram. Without attributes, you cannot draw, you cannot design any ER diagram. Then, dear students, let's move towards the third part, and that is called a relationship. Okay. So I think that is sufficient for today. From tomorrow, since the relationship, it is a long topic, it takes too much time. Its requirements is about 30 minutes. It will take only the relationship. So we will keep it for the next lecture. So till now, thank you very much. for listening me and having this topic.